Bevor wir loslegen, ein kurzer Hinweis in eigener Sache. Du kannst dich für das Female Leadership Programm im Moment wieder anmelden bei uns in der Academy. Wenn du bis zum 2. Mai buchst, dann bekommst du ein Early Bird Paket zugeschickt mit ausgewählten Sachbüchern und Überraschungen. Mehr auf female-leadership-academy.de. Herzlich willkommen zum Female Leadership Podcast. Mein Name ist Vera Strauch und ich bin Host hier im Podcast, in dem es darum geht, dass du deinen ganz eigenen Stil im Job und Leben findest und deinen Weg mutig und selbstbewusst gehst. Zu Gast in dieser Folge ist John Strelecky. Du kennst ihn mittlerweile wahrscheinlich. Er war schon mehrfach hier zu Besuch, ist immer wieder gern gesehener Gast, mehrfacher Bestsellerautor, vor allem auch bekannt, zum Beispiel durch sein Buch Das Café am Rande der Welt. Außerdem steht er auf großen Bühnen, spricht zu Themen rund um persönliche Entwicklung. Und so richtig kann ich gar nicht greifen. Es ist auf jeden Fall so eine ganz spannende Prise Weisheit mit dabei und natürlich auch seine Art, Geschichten zu erzählen, die seine Bücher vor allem auch in Deutschland sehr, sehr erfolgreich machen. John und ich haben über das Durchschnittlichsein gesprochen und darüber, wie wir es vielleicht auch schaffen, uns innerlich wirklich nochmal befreiter zu fühlen, weil wir uns davon lösen, in der Masse uns so einzufügen. Und es war wirklich ein ganz bereicherndes und auch persönliches Gespräch, in dem wir uns angesehen haben, wie wir eben einen Umgang finden können mit ganz menschlichen Ängsten davor, irgendwie nicht richtig zu leben, aber auch auf der anderen Seite zu sehr rauszufallen aus der Menge und uns vielleicht auch gerade so in der Lebensmitte nochmal anders zu orientieren. Eine Frage, die aufgekommen ist, aber auch große Entscheidungen, wie wir sie treffen und wie wir es insgesamt schaffen können, vielleicht auch in unsicheren Momenten mit uns selbst noch mal mehr in Verbindung zu sein, so ein stimmiges Bild nach außen tragen zu können und uns nicht von unserem ganz eigenen Weg abbringen zu lassen, von anderen und ihren Meinungen darüber, wie wir so vermeintlich zu sein haben. Ein wirklich, ich kann es gar nicht so richtig zusammenfassen, aber es war wirklich ein ganz spannendes und für mich auf jeden Fall sehr bereicherndes Gespräch. Insofern freue ich mich sehr, es mit dir zu teilen, wie immer. Es ist sehr kurzweilig. John ist auch sehr gut zu verstehen, obwohl es in englischer Sprache ist. Du kannst auf jeden Fall wirklich ohne Probleme hier zuhören. Und selbst wenn du vielleicht nicht jedes Wort verstehst, John ist sehr klar in dem, was er sagt und wie er es sagt und spricht auch wunderbar langsam. Insofern ganz viel Freude beim Zuhören und dabei mehr als Durchschnitt zu sein. Über den Mut, das Leben in vollen Zügen zu genießen. Ganz viel Freude mit diesem Interview und dann legen wir gleich mal los. On the podcast today, John Strelecky. I'm super happy to have you here again. It's so good to have you here, and we're going to talk about how we can step out of being or feeling average and moving in this really comfort zone-esque feeling and stepping out and doing things that are, maybe a little bit crazy, but then very nice to do and good for us. So it's so good to have you here. Welcome on the show.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Great to have a chance to interact with you. Last time I saw you was in Hamburg. We were having dinner together.
Yes. And I remember us talking.
Yeah, we were talking back then too about some, not exactly this topic that we're going to talk about today, but talking about the issues that matter to you, the issues that matter to me. We were hanging out with another joint friend of ours. And those are the conversations in the evenings that I love the most, where you have a chance to not just chat, but like talk about something that really matters to you. So I treasure those days.
Yes, me too. And when I was thinking about or preparing our conversation today, my colleague and I, we were talking about this topic of being average and the fear of stepping, also in the perception of other people, stepping out of who we are, seemingly have to be. And I think there are many people also, or at least I can talk for myself, who are afraid of being too much. And I try to emancipate myself from that, but I'm not there yet. And especially some people, I still have this, and people I don't know so well, sometimes I'm really afraid of, okay, I'm not normal. And can I really show that? Yeah. So I'm so happy to talk about that. And I wanted to ask you, just to get into this topic, if you can maybe share part of your journey. And because from what I can see, you are someone who made this step and broke out of being average, or maybe doing what was seemingly expected to do, or what would have been the easy way that anyone would see just laying there in front of you.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's been a work in progress for me, for sure. It's not something that I, as a child or as a young adult even felt super comfortable with. So it's something that I had to work on. And it's funny because you and I were talking a little bit before we started even recording about the flow of the conversation and the type of things we were going to talk about. And I said, I'm confident that based on our previous interactions that we're going to start talking and some intuitive pings will come my way. And it's so funny because literally as you were just asking that question, I had this intuitive ping. And that was that it's fascinating to me that even as much as I've worked on this and I now feel very much at home in my personal space, no matter where I am, that our emotions can be different when we're different types of people. The difference to me now is that in the past, when I was younger, I would feel like I needed to adjust my behavior to fit in or to not appear like I didn't know what I was doing. I think that was my great fear when I was younger, is I didn't want to appear stupid. I didn't want to be embarrassed because I didn't fit in. And that probably goes to sort of the way in which I grew up, the socioeconomic background that I lived in. And when you grow up in a certain strata of the economy, I think because of the influence of movies, because of the influence of media in general, you have this perception that you're going to walk into an environment where you quote unquote don't belong. Like, think how many movies are like that you've got the person from the west side of the tracks, a rougher neighborhood, and then suddenly they're in an environment where it's like the country club. And of course, everyone realizes they don't fit in, they don't belong there. I mean, that is in countless movies. And so this becomes part of the DNA that we think is the average ordinary life. And so because of the way that I did grow up, I thought, oh my gosh, like I'm going to get into one of those situations and it's going to be very obvious that like I don't belong, I don't fit in, and people are going to either make fun of me or I'm just going to feel bad about myself. And the truth is that, life doesn't actually happen like that typically. That's very much a movie version of reality. And I think that's one of the things we can do is allow ourselves to ask the question, do my beliefs actually come from a place of authenticity, or are my beliefs coming from a place of something that's not actually true? And so that's been powerful for me. I would say the second powerful thing is to allow myself to recognize when I feel that way. And so I can sort of laugh at myself now. Like if I'm feeling that anxiety or that tension when I walk into a room of people, I can have a little conversation with my brain and say, okay, what's going on up there? Because we should be pretty comfortable in this setting. We know who we are as a human being. We're comfortable with who we are and the choices we make. So do you ever feel that way? Like you notice yourself feeling a particular way when you walk into a different setting, a different type of people? Can you feel it in your sort of DNA or in your brain?
Yeah, I feel it. And it really helps to develop a sense of consciousness for a sort of zoom out or a step on the balcony, which is something that we also do in our team. And I really for me, it's very helpful to have words internally or externally when I speak to people to sort of make explicit what is there implicitly. And it helps in team communication, but it also helps in communication with myself. And I notice myself, especially when I'm anxious or very excited, but not in a positive way, but more in a way, yeah. I think anxious is the right word, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I even feel like I'm shaking, then I feel cold, and I notice that I'm a little bit shaky because I just don't feel so comfortable in the situation. It helps to notice, but I have to say for me, it's tricky sometimes to get out of the situations anyway. To get out of this mode that I'm in there, to become more of the version that I want to be in that moment.
Well, I can tell you what's worked for me, because this is something that also has evolved over time. And I would say one of the settings is if I were to walk into a social situation that is like super glitzy, like super fancy, and everybody's decked out, and it's very much about the look, and it's very much about style. This is something that I just in general don't care about. And so it's something that I think my brain is uncomfortable with, because in general, I don't care about it. And I just feel out of place. And I think that's the emotion that I can catch in myself when I'm in an environment where I feel out of place. But what has worked for me and has helped me get past that is I think of something that I'm confident about. Like, who am I at my core? And who I am at my core is an adventurer. And I literally can put myself in a kayak and run a class 4 river, no problem. I can put myself in a jungle and go hike amongst, waterfalls and monkeys and crocodiles and alligators and the rest of that, no problem. And so when I find myself feeling that anxiety, I just take a couple of deep breaths and I remind myself of who I am. And then I walk into the room with confidence. And that has helped a lot. Now, in order for me to do that, I have to have that part of me that I can reflect on and be confident about. And so that's one of the other things I was thinking about ahead of our conversation. So what enables us as human beings to have that confidence when we walk into any situation? It's recognizing the genius that is within us and recognizing the things that we do very, very well. And so, confidence in anything becomes confidence in everything. And so allowing ourselves to foster what we're good at and become great at that, to me, enables you to walk into a room, any room, and be authentically yourself. You may not love that room still, but you can walk into that room, shoulders back, confident, smile on your face, and a genuine calmness in the heart.
Yeah, and I really like a challenge for myself to look for the love you can have for anybody, because I'm not saying I'm there yet, but for me, it's a very aspirational concept to truly love any living thing, or even not living things, and to find that place in yourself. And especially with people or environments where you feel out of touch or you feel you don't like, it's a big challenge, but it can give yourself and the energy. I wanted to talk to you about energy as well. The energy, it can give you a totally different energy. And it's so interesting what then happens when you give that into such a space.
Yeah, I love that. That actually reminded me of something that has been another tool that I've discovered for myself as well. I think you just described it, but I'll describe it in my version of it. And that is that when I allow myself in that moment of discomfort to enter a state of curiosity, then I go a lot farther. Because, so for example, I'll use the same one for myself. It was the social setting where it's like super glitzy, super glamorous. And so I was at an event one time it was like a State Department type event. I was in a foreign country. I was backpacking, but I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, and his job required him to attend some of these state functions. And so here I am in a foreign country with a bunch of dignitaries, and it's all super foo-foo and dressy and all the rest of that. And I was feeling like, wow, I wish I just had my shorts and t-shirt on and I was out backpacking somewhere. Like, this is definitely not my scene. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe it would be more your scene, John, if you understood more of what it is. And so I tried to enter that place of curiosity. And it was actually, now that I'm thinking through it, it was the exact opposite of where my fear was. I don't want to enter a room and feel stupid. This was embracing my lack of knowledge. And so I literally, the very first person that I got introduced to, or that was a stranger, I would walk up and say, hey, how you doing? I'm John. I'd introduce myself. So I've never been to one of these things before. Like, what is this all about? I literally like laid it on the line that I knew nothing. And so, bare the soul right there. I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel like I don't belong. Like, what's your expertise? Why are you here? And entering that place of curiosity instead of like hiding in the corner changed the whole feel of that evening. I can't say I still loved it. It wasn't, it's not where I would like spend a lot of my time, but that did a lot for me. That's a tip and technique I would recommend to people as well. Still walk shoulders back confident, but allow yourself to ask with curiosity and discover something about that environment, those people that you didn't know before. Because at the end of the day, everybody is a person and they've all got something interesting to share. and there's a reason they're passionate about whatever that is, even if I don't understand it. And I love stories. So, if I can learn something about their story, not only can I learn something about them, which is cool, like you said, from a humanistic perspective, but I can probably learn something about myself in that process too, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, and also there's an element of honesty that can be,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're not just asking about them, but also sharing what the situation is for you, and you're not making something up, because I mean, I experience that people, they can feel if something is off, even if they cannot put a name on it. But I mean, I feel if someone is honest or is trustworthy, or if it's someone who is trying to be someone, and that doesn't have to be a conscious decision, but trying to be someone or making something, being something that is not fully integrated. So
Yeah.
so that's a nice, I think, a nice trust building element as well. Something that is
It's interesting too. I've
underrated,
never
I
thought of
think.
this either. This is why I love these conversations, because it stimulates my creativity and connects a lot of dots for me. I think as we are growing up, again, these social influences that impact our perception of reality. So the scene in the movie where the person is in the environment that is not, quote unquote, their environment, and they are shamed in some way or made to feel less than in some way. That said, if you think about it, in the movies, in a lot of movies is the moment where the person has that comfort to say, I have no idea what I'm doing here. These parties make me a little nervous. And inevitably in the movie, that's the scene of connection. That's when, the hero meets the other hero in the movie, and they connect on the fact that they both feel uncomfortable in this moment, or that they both don't want to be at the party, or that they both do love the party and they love dancing and nobody's dancing. So that's interesting that you bring that up, because that I could pull that part from the movies when I was younger and say, well, actually, that's the way to approach life, to be brutally honest and let the world know when I'm uncomfortable, and let the world know when I'm super happy and whatever. So that would be a better example. And I think the question is, why don't we do that? Why would we not take that example, which is one that shows success, but instead our mind is much more drawn to the one that shows this is the one to avoid. Like, this is where the pain is. And I think that's probably maybe part of the answer, is that we're more afraid of the pain than we are drawn to the tremendous opportunity. But I don't think that's actually the way we have to stay. As a matter of fact, I can confirm that that's not the way we have to stay.
Yeah, and before we get deeper into that, there's this fear of pain, and what we don't really recognize, I think oftentimes, is that covering up pain or trying to prevent us from pain is causing pain, like being not honest and putting so much energy and effort into something that is not real, or it takes a lot of energy just to cover things up, to not doing what we actually can do, or not telling the true story, and then we have to keep track of whom did I tell what, and that causes a lot of pain, and it costs a lot of energy and effort. And I think that's something that it's because it's so learned and trained as a behavior in general, that we maybe don't really have a comparison of how much weight we lose and how much energy we gain, and how much being free of freedom from pain, actually, because I think it's painful to hold all of that. We don't really have the comparison unless we do it and we try it.
Yeah, and that's a good personal challenge to say, okay, this has been the way that I've been operating, and that's more of a survival mode, what you're talking about. And I think you're right. In general, we grow up with these fears, and so we enter perpetual survival mode. How do I cover up my pain? How do I pretend I'm not in pain? How do I pretend I fit in even when I don't fit in? Emotionally, I don't feel like I fit in. And so, yeah, allowing ourselves to embrace the open time, where we lay ourselves out there and say, like, I'm uncomfortable in this situation, and I don't feel like I fit in. Or when we're just inquisitive, even when we know nothing about the topic at hand, like I was describing, to try that on for size for a month would be a very interesting experiment. Like, I think my progression has been much more gradual. I can't say I ever did the big hard stop and then let's try something new for 30 days and see how I feel at the end of that. But I've done that with other aspects of my life, and I think it's a phenomenal technique. So I think it could be very effective in this regard as well. If someone identified, like, these are the things that are really holding me back and causing me that pain, and for 30 days, I'm going to go the opposite direction with that.
I'm curious, in which area, or do you have an example where you did this, let's try that on for a month thing?
Yeah, actually, I did the one this year. So every year I look at the year and say, okay, so what's going to make this year the best year ever? And one of the things that I noticed for myself was I've been an athlete my whole life. And when I was in my late 20s, especially, I did a lot of weight work. So as part of my athletic training during the winter time, because I played my sport in the summer, during the winter time, I would lift a lot of weights and do a lot of cardio work. And so now, you know, you're a parent, you're busy with your parenting stuff, you're doing your work stuff, and it's so easy to just not do something like lift weights. And so I decided that this year I was going to start trying to build muscle mass again. And so I made the commitment that I was going to do push-ups, because I've always heard that push-ups, squats, and pull-ups are the easiest thing. Pretty much you can do them anywhere. You can do it in your house, etc. And so, Vera, this is embarrassing to say, except it has a good story at the end. And so it's always hurt when I did push-ups, and I didn't understand why. So I look online and realize, like, there's 3 things you are not supposed to do when you do a push-up that are very bad for you. And of course, I'm doing all 3 of them because I've never actually been trained on how to do this right. And so, but it's so amazing this time in human history that we live in, because I can look online, I can find the perfect push-up and the things you're supposed to make sure you don't do. And so I was like, all right, great. Here's what the perfect push-up looks like. It looks nothing like the push-ups that I've been doing my entire life. And so I get on the floor and I try and do them, and I can only do 4 perfect push-ups. And that's embarrassing. I mean, I've been an athlete my whole life, and to be able to do 4 perfect push-ups is embarrassing. But, you know, and I think this is the moment that we often find ourselves in, whether it's trying to learn a new skill, or it is putting ourselves out there. Let's say you wanted to try stand-up comedy, and you put yourself out there in an open mic night and you bomb terribly the first night, right? But this is the decision point in life. This is the inflection point where you have to decide, okay, am I going to just quit out of embarrassment at the way I performed? Or am I going to learn from this experience and keep at it? And so while I was embarrassed that I could only do 4 push-ups, I was like, I'm not quitting here. I'm going to keep at this. And so we are now, I don't know, it's like mid-February. So we are now like a month and a half in. It is amazing how good I feel at this point. And I noticed that it took until about day 42. Like, that is when all of a sudden something clicked. And it went from being something technical, like, oh, am I using perfect form, to I had mastered the perfect form. And it was part of my day. It was part of my routine at this point. And this is what really kicked. And I think this applies to so many different aspects of life. It now was something that not only did I not worry about, am I using perfect form, but I liked the way it felt. I liked the feeling of feeling my muscles again. And I think this goes to the same thing with when you walk into a room with confidence, that you like the way that feels. You like it when you walk in with your shoulders back and you're excited to go talk to someone. And I think this applies to the scenario I was describing before too, that where before I was uncomfortable in certain situations, that when I got curious, it changed the whole frame. And so now if I'm walking into that setting again, I can walk in kind of excited about it. Like, all right, I don't know anything about this, so I guess I'm going to, and I know the process. And maybe that's part of what enables us to get beyond average, beyond these fears, is having a process that we have discovered works really good for us and that we can default back to.
And also allowing us to learn, and that it takes time to get there. And even if I tried it once, it's probably with anything in my life, it's not that I'm there, that I'm at the same point when I tried it once as I am after doing it 42 times in a row, every day. So sometimes I think it's expectations towards ourselves that can be so harsh and so inhuman, because we would never do that with any other person on the planet, but with ourselves, the measurement is totally different.
That's a beautiful thought right there. Do I treat myself with the same loving kindness as I treat everybody else? And if the answer to that is no, that's a good opportunity to give yourself a 30-day break. Yeah. The voice inside the head is basically telling ourselves who we are. It's reinforcing for us. So if we're constantly walking around saying, I'm not confident, I could never do that, I'm not capable of that, then that's the message that we're reinforcing. And interestingly, in the field of psychology, we have come to learn as a society that people will look for data points that support their belief systems already. So if your belief system is, I can't do that, or I'm not an adventurer, then we will look for data points to support that personal belief system. But to the contrary, if we start to define ourselves, even if we don't have data to support it yet, if we start to define ourselves, I'm an adventurous person, then when opportunities to fulfill that enter our space, we're more likely to be drawn to those and to leap into that piece of the life opportunity.
And I really like the phrase loving kindness. And there's not a German equivalent. I don't think so. And the whole concept of being kind is so resonating with me. I mean, I love the concept of loving, but kindness also has a certain way of, maybe it's easier to access for people.
Maybe you can invent the phrase for the German language.
Yeah, I'm on it. I think for years now. I don't have it yet, but I'm working on it. I wanted to get back to being, you said that earlier, being more afraid of pain than being drawn towards, what did you say? It was so nice.
The opportunity.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on this, being afraid of the pain?
I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think the key for me, what I've discovered in my life and what I've tried to help other people think through also, is that sometimes you have to find a bigger pain. So if you don't have a good grasp on the opportunity yet, and that's not drawing you to where you want to go, then find a bigger pain that will get you towards the opportunity. So let me give you an example of this. In the fourth book in the Cafe series, Über Kaffee am Rande der Welt, there is an interaction between this character, Hannah, who's 15, and Max, who is like 80. And in their interactions and their discussions, in the discussions with other people in the cafe, Max tells this story about playing the fast forward game, about this defining moment in his life when he learned that if he took a moment and he projected it forward 5, 10, 20, 40 years, then it would enable him to make better decisions in the here and now. And I think in the context that we're talking about, this same concept can be applied a lot. So for example, if in your heart of hearts, what you've always wanted to do was to travel the world, or have a child, or learn to play guitar, or sing a song in front of an audience, or start an entrepreneurial venture, but the fear is what's holding you back, the uncertainty of what that's going to feel like. That if you play Max's fast forward game and you project yourself 5 years out, 20 years out, or this is the one that matters most to me, is projecting yourself to the last few moments of your life. In that scenario, how will you feel knowing that you didn't do it? You never got on that stage. You didn't have the child that you dreamed of having. You didn't open the business that you dreamed of opening. And if you allow yourself to enter that space and really feel that energy, that uncomfortableness, that dissatisfaction can be the driver that enables you to get beyond whatever is your current fear.
And it connects you with the meaning the thing has for you, yeah? Because it's not just something randomly picked, but it's something that is particularly important for you. And maybe also the result can be that it's something that is actually not as important as you thought, because that's something that I know as well with life decisions. I know that from a lot of female friends and women my age. I'm in my end 30s, and this is a time that can be very tricky. That's something very personal, but it's something that I know many women are struggling with. Do I want children or not? If I am able to biologically in, no? But in general, it's such a big life decision, because you were mentioning it in the examples that you had. It's such a big life decision, and there are so many good reasons, but also for having children, but also for not having them, yeah, and for just having a fulfilled life. I mean, yeah, and so I know that many people are struggling with it, and the tricky thing about that is that, you know, the clock is just ticking. It's not fair, but it's ticking. So I know that this is something that it's rarely talked about, because it's so personal and it's sensitive and it's complex. And I when you were talking about it, I thought, it's a nice exercise that can maybe be a little element, even for those, you know, for those big questions, and maybe also for this case, to just get a grip on what do I really want, especially when there are so many expectations, who I have to be. Also from my, you know, the younger self I once had, you know, I always picture myself with a family, and now I'm here and I don't know if I want, you know, and I think that's a valid question. And so it's the fast forward game. I like it.
Yeah. No, I think you raised so many great points there. First of all, the idea that you discover, especially visually. So if you can project yourself, and everybody's brain works a little different. So for some people, it might be an auditory response when they play the fast forward game. For some, they might get a physical sensation. They might get chills, or they might get a warmth feeling that comes over them when they viewed the future a particular way. And for someone else, it could be very visual, that they are actually envisioning that time period 40 years in the future, or at the very end of their life, and seeing themselves and seeing what did or did not happen. And then from there, they can make their decision. What I love about what your comment was is that it enables you to get to the question of why. Why does this matter to me? And so many times in life, we make decisions that have nothing to do with our core authentic reasons. It's based on a perception that we had of ourselves when we were 12, and we've been hanging on to that perception now, even though our life is very different, or it's a perception of other people's desires. And so there are so many people's parents who are like, when are you guys going to have babies? Like, I'd love to be a grandparent. Like, oh my gosh, you know, I hear that all the time from my friends when I was the age that you're talking about, like mid to late 30s. And so then you've got other people putting a vision into your head, and like their needs, wants, and desires are entering your periphery. But at the end of the day, the only person that you have to look back upon is you, because you're the only one who really knows you and what you truly want out of life.
And then I think still it can be so tricky, because we are not just living in a vacuum. We are, you say vacuum, yeah? No?
Yeah.
We're not just, you know, we're not just isolated from other humans, and especially those who are very close to us. And sometimes for some people, I think they're just these few but very deep and important relationships. And I think it's tricky to find the right balance, or maybe even, I'm interested in what you are saying, to just have the right boundaries, maybe. The question is, can I disconnect the meaning and my happiness from other people's happiness? Yeah, and maybe for some people it is very meaningful and important how happy other people are, especially, for example, a parent. And so can I disconnect things that have such a direct impact on the happiness and meaning of other people?
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's easy, but the answer is yes. We can allow ourselves to get to the core essence of who we are as human beings, what we most want out of this life, and why we most want those things. And that why question is so critical, because at the end of the day, if the why ends up being somebody else still, then it's still not quite you, you know? And there's so many aspects of life that you also don't know how it's going to look and feel. Parenting is one of those rare ones. As you know, we've talked about parenting before, because I'm a father as well. And that literally until you have your own kid, you can't know what it's like to have your own kid. You can't understand how much responsibility 24/7 goes into it, especially during the first 2 years of their lives. And so the perception that we're told from movies and from the baby ads and the rest of that gives one picture, but it's going to be totally different when you actually have your own kid. And this is the great challenge of that decision, that you can't really try it except by trying it. And once you try it, you're in for the long haul. This is an 18-year commitment, if not longer. And so it's really worth it to allow ourselves to ask that question of, is this something that I truly want, that I feel truly drawn to trust your own intuitive senses? So that's that particular topic. I will say for other things that have less of a all-encompassing reality associated with them, that the more you can allow yourself to sample life, the easier it is to figure out whether this is your thing or not. And also the more motivation that comes from that. And so if someone said to you, if they said to you, Vera, you can never scuba dive again, right? You're the age you are in your 30s and you can never scuba dive again. Well, if you've never actually even swam in the ocean and you don't snorkel and you've never scuba dived already, then for someone to say you can't do that has very little emotional power. You'd be like, all right, well, whatever. I can't drive a semi truck anymore either. Or, I can't go paragliding and I've never done that either. And I don't really care. But if it's something that you think you're interested in, then the more you sample it and the deeper into the experience you immerse yourself, now you can really say whether or not when you play the fast forward game, that this is going to be a regret if you don't do it. And so my suggestion always for people is to do your best to find ways to open up space in your life. You can just have your sample hour every day, or at least every week, 1 hour every week that is your sample hour, and immerse yourself in these things that you think you feel called to. And once you've immersed yourself in them, if you love them as much as you think you're going to love them, that can give you the courage to go beyond average. That can be the pull that motivates you to find ways to spend more minutes every single day, every single week doing those things. But in the absence of trying them, it's pretty easy to just say, okay, I just won't do that.
And to add to the relationship, I had a thought on your life decisions being connected to other people and their happiness and well-being and things. If we look at this parent-children relationship, for me, I have a young child, so I still see the importance of investing in myself. Investing is not a good word for that, but taking care of myself, because that is an act of loving kindness also towards others, especially if they love you. And I know that I know people with, old parents, maybe not everyone is reflecting and, having things thought well through. And so I think it can really help to make that clear for oneself again and again, that especially for those people I love and who love me, it is so important to take care of myself and, find a way that is good for me and love myself and treat myself like someone I love, because that is the greatest gift I can give someone who loves me. And that really, that helps me to also for healthy boundary setting, because in any direction, it's a very important thing to do, and no one can do that the way that you can. No one has access to the resources that you have when it comes to taking care of yourself. And that's something that for me as a parent is becoming more and more, when it comes to my health, for example, more and more important, because I know, okay, now there's someone who's relying on me. I have to take care of myself to be healthy. But also in terms of, for the own parents, even if they cannot understand your life decisions, they want you deep down, and if they cannot express it, but deep down, they want their child to be happy and they love it. And so if it's something that makes you happy and it's good for you, they will maybe not be able to express how much they appreciate that you take care of yourself, but deep down, it's what they actually want. So maybe that, I think that can help. I was thinking about that when you were talking, that this is something I heard in your words as well.
No, I think that's a great perspective to be part of this conversation, that it's not a selfish thing to allow yourself to figure out what makes you happy, what makes you complete. Think about it from all the different relationships we'll start with the parent one. A parent who loves their child wants their child to grow up living a happy, fulfilled, complete life. And so we are the single greatest role model for our children to do that. If they don't see us doing that in some capacity, then where are they going to possibly learn that? And so, but if they do see us, then we are the most significant anchor in a positive anchor way that will demonstrate that, because, parents by default are like heroes to their children when they're good parents. And so these different behaviors that we're exhibiting of, oh, this is mommy's dance day, or this is mommy goes off to do a speech day because she just loves doing that, or whatever the case is, that those are things that on an unconscious level will enter the mind of that child so that they know when they're a little bit older, oh, it's actually okay to do things that you love. That's a very, very powerful message to send. And I will say that I think you're right, that a parent who loves their child, so like an older parent who loves their adult child, may always be fearful, but the fear comes from a place of love. They may not be able to articulate it well. They may not be able to balance it in what they say well. But for us to be able to step back and say, I know they don't realize what they're saying may come across as harmful, but I understand it comes from a place of love, that at the end of the day, they do want me to be happy. So I think our best shot there is to say, mom, dad, uncle, whatever, whoever the person is, I know this may not fit your worldview, but when I do this entrepreneurial thing, instead of working at a regular job, it actually makes me feel more free. It makes me feel fearless because I feel like I'm controlling my own destiny. So I know that from a place of love, you worry about me. And I want you to know that you can worry a lot less when I'm doing this thing that I love to do. And they may not get that, right? But maybe they will. Or it may take them years to get that. But I think allowing ourselves to have that conversation with them certainly cements in our mind the reality of the moment. And I think to some degree opens up a conversation that may lead to very, very good things with that person. And that's actually probably well beyond just the adult child relationship. That probably goes to every relationship. I'm thinking of friends. Sometimes friends fear for you because they love you too. And they see you about to make this decision and it doesn't quite fit with their worldview. Maybe they carry a lot of fear inside them, so they fear for you too. And so to have that same type of dialogue, that same type of conversation could go a long way with all kinds of different people.
Yeah. You were talking about selfishness, and I think it's very important because I often hear those words used in a wrong way, or from my point of defining those words. Because I hear in German we have this word, it's called egoistisch, so egocentric probably, or selfish. And it's actually not the same as being self-loving or putting yourself first, taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. I would even say, would you say it's the opposite? I'm not.
So I've had some very interesting and lengthy discussions on this topic of allowing yourself to, we may have talked about this in one of our previous conversations, but allowing yourself to be helped is an act of love because the other person wants to help you because it makes them feel good. And so when you deny other people the opportunity, it basically is selfish because I'm not letting them feel good by helping me. And in the same capacity, if I don't allow myself to be authentic, if I don't allow myself to live the life that I know I'm capable of living, then I'm not going to glow. And the way that we inspire the people around us the most is by being our best version of ourselves. Imagine a world in which the music that you love was never created because that artist struggled with self-confidence and struggled with people telling them you can never make your living as a musician. And so they never created the song. Like, think of the top 5 songs that every time you hear them, it makes you smile or laugh or whatever. And those songs never existed because that person wasn't allowed to be the best version of themselves. So that to me is where I can easily get beyond this version of egocentric. It's not egocentric to be the best version of yourself. And only you know what that looks like and what you're capable of.
Yeah. And that brings me to this. I was talking about that in the beginning today. Being too much, this fear of being too much, because and I can talk from my personal experience because I feel like I sometimes can be, if I don't pace myself, I can, especially with people who don't know me, I can be totally over, I don't know what, but I know that it's just too much for people. And if I am super honest with people, and I could so relate to your what you were saying about this party that you were going to, and then you were just openly talking about, I've never been to this, where am I here? Yeah. So the way that I would openly speak about that, I know that there are some people who would get me, but I know that there are people who would just be thinking, who is she? There's a person, she's a person who does not fit any pattern or any expectation I have of someone. You know, I'm looking at her, I have a certain expectation. And whenever I can behave in a way that people would judge me, and I can do that. And sometimes I do it. Also because sometimes I maybe don't know what else to do. But if I am totally free and totally the one who I like to be, and put all my energy out there, it can be very overwhelming to people. So I'm not writing songs, but it would be it's sort of my way of expressing myself and producing something with it. And I'm curious what you, and I think that other people, maybe not in the way that I do it, but have this fear of the pain that can bring, because it can be a certain way of feeling rejected and or maybe not understood by others. And I mean, what we really want as humans is being seen for who we are, being understood. Maybe not, I don't want that anyone is saying, you know, yeah, I truly agree with you, Vera, but I want people to look at me and say, okay, I see you. And it's okay that you are the way that you are. But I think, or I know for myself, that it can be very hurtful to put yourself out there and maybe trying something out. Yeah, have a sample hour of who I really am. And then meeting people who mirror you, show you that they don't get you. Which doesn't mean that they don't like you, but in this moment it feels like, you know, maybe the person is just like trying to, with my example, yeah, if you say with my example, the person is just looking at me, she's like, I don't know, I need to process this first. I had that in my leadership role. Like, people were looking at me and I was like, what's happening? Why is no one responding? And then with coaching and stuff, I understood, no, people are trying, they are processing, they need more time than you, Vera. It's not that they reject you, they just need more time maybe. But in the moment itself, for me, it felt like being too much. It's not okay to be yourself. And using that then to, you know, my belief system and going on with it. So what to do about it?
There's two very interesting, potentially conflicting, deep ingrained needs at a cellular level within the human experience that I hear in that story. So one is that historically we were better off if we were within a tribe. And so the lone human wandering amongst all the predators probably didn't last too long, going back 30,000, 100,000, as far back as humanity goes, because we were basically somewhat weak compared to the big predators. And so a single person out there alone was going to be in trouble. And think about it, especially from the cues that you get when you're a baby or even a small child. You think you're weak as an adult compared to a saber-toothed tiger or a lion or whatever. Imagine a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old, like you're nothing, right? And so the great fear that I think we learn, and fear is a very learned thing, by the way, and we can talk about that. Why does fear exist? Fear is a learned behavior, and it's something that carries on at a cellular level from generation to generation, potentially, when there's data points that reinforce it. And so we have this historical fear that it's important for me to be an accepted member of the community. Back then, it was an accepted member of the tribe. The tribe was the small gathering of people who lived together and protected each other. And, you know, someone would hunt, someone would gather, and collectively they would pool the resources. And if we were part of that tribe, we had a much better chance of survival. So this is a very deep survival mechanism that exists in our brain that says, hey, it's important that you stay within the tribe. Like, don't do something so bad that you're going to be kicked out of the tribe. Well, as humans have evolved, that's less and less relevant. Like, we don't need to be out there hunting and protecting ourselves in groups from saber-toothed tigers. That is not the reality of our current civilization. As we have evolved as human beings and gotten rid of those kinds of things, there's another awareness, which is the desire to live an authentic life, the desire to live a fulfilled, a purpose-filled life, right? I talk about that in Das Café am Rande der Welt, the very first question on the cafe menu. Why are you here? So we are at this point in the human story called to answer the much more philosophical, all-encompassing, makes you feel better about your human experience story. But we still have this old code existing within us that says, don't get kicked out of the tribe because bad things happen when that happens. So how do we balance these things? Well, the great news is that these days you can find yourself a tribe of people that live literally anywhere around the world. So if you're a super high energy entrepreneur who is totally driven towards the fields of wireless technology and the way in which it will integrate and interact with societies across multiple spectrums of socioeconomic platforms, like that is about as niche as you can get. Well, great news, because there's probably at least 1,000 other people somewhere in the world who have this same deep passion, and that can be your tribe. And so you can allow yourself to make this connection to the people who are interested in the things that you're interested in, passionate about the topics that you're passionate about in, and that fulfills this deep need within us to have a tribe. And at the same time, because you get to pick who your tribe members are, you can pick the thing that actually makes you feel fulfilled, the thing that answers that question on the cafe menu, why am I here? And so there is a way to blend both of these two things together. It does require an awareness of this reality, but once you become aware of it, you can sort of free yourself from the need to fit into every piece of the tribe all the time, because it's just not necessary.
And having people in your life who get you and understand you and feedback that to you on a regular basis, that's what helps you to, or that can be an important element to feel connected and that can make it easier, from my experience, to actually get into situations where you feel not yet, or maybe never, or never say never, but not yet, that connected and understood. It makes it easier because there's a place where I can go and where it's okay and where people get me, and maybe it's part of my journey. That's how I see it. Maybe it's part of my journey that there are some people who don't get me, or maybe it's even part of my journey to disrupt in a certain way. Yeah. There's this, we spoke about the discomfort in my book about discomfort. And I see it as part of, bringing a certain way of discomfort, but maybe even in a pleasant way, because that can be nice as well. Yeah. You're disrupted, and it's making you a little bit uncomfortable because it's not what you expected, but it's not something that is totally terrible. And it maybe helps even people like that. That's how I see it. People like that, they shake the bubbles. And so it's nice. Yeah. You have your core bubble, or however we want to call it, where you feel connected and you feel safe, and you have these comfortable spaces where you can recharge. And then it also can be nice to get out and get into different bubbles and shake things up for you and also for others.
Yeah, I think you raised a couple of really good points there that I love in that topic as well, which is, one, it's awesome to have people that support you, even if they don't necessarily have the same passion that you do. Mm-hmm. And so we can be encouraging and enthusiastic for a best friend or a partner or a spouse who is spending their time and energy and resources on something that we really don't care about, but we see how much it matters to them, and we can still be a great supporter of that. And others can be that for us as well. So I think that's a great takeaway too, that it's not necessarily about just finding your tribe who is 100% just like you and only interacting with those people. Like, that's not really necessary. What is necessary is to allow yourself to disconnect from the people who are unsupportive, and therefore find yourself people who are supportive, even if they don't get what you do, or people who are supportive because they also love what you do. Like, that combination is very, very powerful. And I think that's an absolute win. And in terms of shaking up, I think that's a balancing act for me too, because there are times when I feel like I want to shake it up, but then I also sometimes have to pull myself back and say, listen, maybe the reason they don't want it shook up is because they like it the way it is. And so how do I this is a balancing act for me of honoring the times when I realize like they just love it like that, even though I don't get it. And this is something that I feel like they don't like. I want to shake it up because I was where they were and I was unhappy and I didn't realize that there was an alternative. And I think that's the driver that I have to shake things up at times. It's more about creating awareness of alternatives than it is to just shake it up for the sake of shaking it up. And so blending and balancing those two things is something that I'm constantly looking for. What's the right mix of that? Because I don't like to be told what to do ever. And so I fully realize that depending on how much and the way in which I'm shaking something up, I might be doing exactly what I don't like being done to me. So that's not a win either.
Yeah, it's shaking up with intention and with a loving kindness, a loving and kind intention. And that doesn't mean that the method is not shaky or doesn't feel like being shaken, but it has a good intention from where it comes. And an openness and curiosity because it's not a passive thing. What I see, it's human interaction. It's something that is never just controlled by one person. It is something that I open up for and I give something myself, but there are always other people, at least one other person involved, and equally makes it to become something unique, where everyone is contributing and it's not something that is just controlled by the other person. And that can be.
And, at the end of the day, the more I study the human history that we exist in, the more I realize that if the desire of the shakeup is to bring about change can only come about when I truly understand that person and they truly understand me. Like, why am I doing these things? Why do I think this is the right way? And why are they doing what they're doing? And why do they think it's the right way? And that goes back to, I remember spending time in Ireland, Northern Ireland and Ireland, and understanding what went on there in the 80s. When I was in South Africa, understanding what went on with apartheid and how these amazing conflicts, not amazing from a good perspective, but like amazing in terms of their intensity. Like these were incredibly intense conflicts that no longer did not need to continue. Like there was a time when they came to an end. And the way they came to an end in both of those stories was both parties actually, to your point before about they saw each other, they understood each other's fears, each other's concerns, each other's needs, wants, and desires, and said, okay, now that we understand each other, where can we go to get to the point where both parties are actually at a better place than where we are right now? And that to me was so impressive that these people were able to go and move themselves in that direction, that I think to myself, okay, well, the things I'm facing and dealing with are far less dramatic than that. And so if I'm willing to put aside my own fears and understand where this person is coming from, and hopefully they understand where I'm coming from, maybe we can get to a better place and I can get over my own issues and they can get over whatever things they're struggling with. I think sometimes at the end of the day, like we're going to try something and it's going to work. We're going to try something that's not going to work. It's not about like 100% success rate in life either. And this goes pretty much as a thread through our entire conversation so far, that when you're trying to reallocate some of your time, some of that's going to be effortless. Some of it you're going to allocate and be like, oh, actually, that wasn't what I expected. And so then you're going to do something different. So embracing the fact that there's going to be some, I don't know if I'll call them failures because you learn something in the process, but some things that don't go exactly as you were hoping for.
Our time is almost up. And I'm thinking of maybe just one last question. When we get back to the part of the fear that is at the center of many of what's holding us back, usually it's fear of something, and maybe fear comes wrapped in anger, but in general, or some other emotion, but in general, the core of it is being afraid, or even if it's afraid of pain, what you were talking about. And the fear of failing, not being successful, or even losing things, losing a certain security, can be something very tangible and something that, especially for people who maybe didn't grow up with a safety net of wealthy parents, who didn't grow up in a highly educated household, who maybe from an early age know a deep sense of insecurity, and even something tangible like financial insecurity, or lack of financial Safety. Do you have thoughts or tips on how to deal with that? Because it's not something we can just ignore. It's something very important and something that is important for our sense of safety, which is real and there and necessary even.
Yeah, and it can be very deep. It can be so deep as what you fear is being hungry, what you fear is being homeless. So this can be something that is a learned behavior where you're driving in the car someday and your parents point out someone who's homeless and says, this is why it's so important that you study in school, Vera, because otherwise you could end up like that person, right? Or it could be that you personally in your life story have experienced hunger where there literally was not enough to go around. And again, at moments in my life, these were the things that were part of my code. And so they became the way that I thought about things. It was very difficult to step outside of those, but what helped me step outside of them is finding something that you can anchor to. And I'll give you one good example and one that is kind of ridiculous, but it still works for me. So there you have it. So I'll give you the ridiculous one first. The ridiculous one is that I look at the world around me and I see people that are able to function in society and they don't try super hard and they don't do a great job either. And so this could be everything from you're buying something at a store and the person that's checking you out is completely distracted, doesn't really care that you're there. And you're like, wow, that was a horrible customer service experience right there. Right. Or they're just completely inept. And so when I encountered those situations over the course of my life, what I realized was, wow, if that person has a job, I'm pretty sure I can always have a job. Because I actually show up on time and I do a really good job and I'm committed to providing a good customer experience. And so as stupid as that example is, and I realize it is stupid, sometimes seeing the dysfunction around you can help you realize the way in which a belief system that you might be holding is actually dysfunctional, right? And so by me realizing that I can always find a job, it enabled me to get over the fears of what if there comes a day when I am hungry, because I should never be hungry. And so, again, find little examples like that. You can anchor on those. Even better though, so that's like sort of a baseline example. Even better is finding examples of people who have succeeded in the way that you wish you could succeed, even if they overcame a major obstacle. And so, for example, if you would love to take a year sabbatical and go study something different or go travel the world for a year, and that is a barrier for you because you think, oh my gosh, if I take this year off, what will that mean to my career? Or what am I going to do for income generation? Because a year off means that I won't be generating my regular salary that I get from my regular job. The more stories you can find of people who have done exactly what you want to do, have dealt with the exact issue that is holding you back from making a decision, then the more comfortable your brain gets with this is possible for you too. And so biographies are great for that. The web is a great search tool for that. There's sort of unlimited ways in which you can fill that need. But the fear comes from a lack of knowledge or a lack of experience. And so the lack of knowledge in that example would be, I just don't know what's going to happen. What happens if I take this year off and it doesn't go the way I expect? Well, once you have stories, now you have the knowledge that you can say, well, these are the 4 or 5 or 10 options I could pursue if that indeed does happen, based on real life experiences of what other people have done. And so those two things have been really, really powerful for me in terms of getting beyond these fears, in conjunction with everything we've already talked about, the fast forward game and the rest of that.
Thank you so much, John. That was very interesting and helpful, and I really liked this. Thank you so much. On the website for this podcast, for this episode, we will put in the show notes your website and your books for anyone who doesn't know them as yet, which will only be a few people. And anything else we can put for people to look up your current work?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll share one example. It's something that is applicable and available for everybody who's listening, and it really ties into everything we've been talking about. So my team and I get together every year at the start of the year, and we talk about what would make this an amazing year. and what would make it an amazing year in conjunction with the things that we're working on, that we're passionate about. And so we thought, well, it would be really cool if we established a bigger presence on Instagram, because we have millions of followers out there who have read the books and love the books. And our Instagram follower count doesn't match that. And so what can we do to create something fun for fans and also to help us get more connected? And so we came up with this idea of John Funds Your Dream. And this is exactly in spirit with this whole conversation. We had no idea. I had no idea whether this was going to work or not. Would people just completely ignore us? It'd be like walking into the room and feel like I don't fit in. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Or would people get excited about it? And so the idea is that every 21 days, someone who follows us on Instagram and is participating in this particular campaign, and it's very easy to participate. The rules are up on my Instagram account. That every 21 days, I pick someone who has commented with what their dream is, and I contribute up to €1,000 towards that dream. And so we now have just picked the second winner as of today. And it's interesting to me, the psychology of how many people are participating or not participating, and how many people post their dream or are afraid to post their dream. And so my great dream with this project, Vera, is that the more pictures we post of the winners, that the more people, exactly what we're talking about, they now have a vision of what their life could be like. And that pulls them to overcome their fear of posting that dream. And by posting the dream, they become eligible. So we just funded someone whose dream was to get this really high-end camera because they love photography and they couldn't afford the camera. And so that was the winner this week. The first winner was a woman who wanted to enable her daughter to go to art school. And so we're funding her daughter to go to art school. And so I like this idea for so many reasons now. And it has not been without the hiccups. It has not been without challenges. It has had plenty of those. But the point is, just like my push-ups, we're at about, I don't know what we are now. I'm not sure we started at a 4 like my push-ups. We probably started about a 10. But the goal is to get to the point where we're really kicking with this thing. And we're enabling a lot of people to post their dreams and get connected with them. So if somebody wants to participate, go to my Instagram channel at John Strelecky. And we want to fund your dream in 2023. Every 21 days, we fund somebody's dream. So hopefully people will be inspired. They'll get connected with their dream. They'll post it, let the world know about it. That can only produce great things. And hopefully we'll be one of the people you'll be one of the people that we pick to fund that dream. So yeah, it's an interesting example of everything that we've been talking about. That's one of our projects for 2023.
Sounds great. We will put that in the show notes and your Instagram account. And I thank you so much, John.
Oh, I thank you.
I really enjoyed
every time we talk, Vera, one of the things I
Yes.
love about our conversations, and I'm sure you noticed it during this one, is like you'll say something that makes me think about the world in a different way. And
You too.
I love that. That helps me. And, to me, that's that collaborative spirit that we've been talking about. If you can find your tribe of people who either just support you because they think what you're doing or who you are as a human being is a great thing, and they just want you to be happy and successful, or because they just have the same passion that you do, it just makes life so much better. We all grow in the process, and that's a win for everybody. So thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for inviting me on the show, and thank you for stimulating new thoughts in my brain.
Thank you so much and all the best. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
I hope you'll be back.
I look forward to it. See ya.
Ich hoffe, dass du ganz viel für dich aus diesem Gespräch mitnehmen konntest. Vielleicht auch nochmal Lust hast, für dich zu fragen, ob du Angst davor hast, zu viel zu sein für andere. Vielleicht auch andere mit der Art, wie du wirklich bist oder den Gedanken, die du wirklich hast oder die Fragen, die du dir wirklich stellst. Andere vielleicht auch zu überfordern oder auf Unverständnis zu treffen und Lust hast zu überlegen, ob es nicht vielleicht trotzdem ganz spannend sein könnte, das mal auszuprobieren, ein bisschen mehr davon anderen zu zeigen und vielleicht auch das wirklich als Geschenk an andere zu verstehen. Und mir fiel dazu noch ein Buch, das ich gelesen habe, oder auch die Arbeit von einer Autorin, die mich dazu sehr berührt hat, und zwar von Virginia Satir heißt sie, Your Many Faces. Es gibt es auch in deutscher Sprache. Wir verlinken das auch nochmal in den Shownotes, was dazu, finde ich, ganz wunderbar passt und zu dieser Stimmigkeit und vielleicht auch nochmal ein Stück weit diesem sich befreien vom Durchschnitt oder den Erwartungen, die so an uns gestellt werden. Also In diesem Sinne, ganz viel Freude dabei. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören. Eine richtig schöne Woche. Ich freue mich, wenn wir uns hier nächste Woche wieder hören. Bis dahin und alles Liebe, deine Vera.